It has been a long time since there's been this much action. One sad note in all this, of course, is the absence of one name. Our job is to choose whom we think can be the most effective. It's an interesting and exciting race, and all we have to do is vote. So let's do it, and let's make it a big one. We pray that is so. This is Bob Harrington.
Washington moves fast, policy shift overnight, and yet here in our corner of Vermont, the real impact often comes at the speed of town meetings and Main Street conversations. Politics aren't just about headlines and sound bites. It's about people, communities, and the choices that shape our lives. They say all politics is local, but in a nation this divided, what does that actually mean? We're not here for spin. We're here for clarity, for straight answers, for the kind of talk you'd expect over a cup of coffee at the local diner, not in the halls of Congress. This is Matt Harrington, and this is the Chamber Telecast. Welcome back to the Chamber Telecast, a civic conversation series presented by the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce in partnership with our great partners over at Catamount Access Television. I'm your host, Matt Harrington. As we navigate the complexities of 2025, our commitment remains steadfast to foster thoughtful dialogue, elevate voices of reason, and provide Vermonters with trusted insights from our state and national leaders. Today, we are honored to host Congresswoman Becca Balint on the show. Representative Balint was elected in 2022 as a Vermont's at-large representative to the U.S. House, making history as the first woman and first openly LGBTQ plus person to represent Vermont in Congress. As a former educator and majority leader in the Vermont Senate, where she became President pro temp, Balint is known for her sharp intellect, compassionate leadership, and deep roots in Vermont's civic fabric. Her background as a teacher shapes her advocacy with equity, education, and youth engagement. In Washington, Congresswoman Balint has emerged as a vocal leader on issues ranging from rural economic development and reproductive rights to campaign finance reform. We're going to talk a little bit about that today as well, and LGBTQ plus protections. She serves on the House Judiciary and Budget Committees and is a key member of both the Congressional Progressive Caucus and the Equality Caucus. Welcome, Congresswoman Balint. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's very kind of you.
Well, we know you're busy. We know you're all busy there. And so we appreciate you carving out some time with us here, really about taking all that you're seeing at the national level and bring it right down into Vermont and even into Southwestern Vermont and speaking right to our community members and our chamber members. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so we'll start with a lighthearted question.
That's great.
Because I think the rest of the questions are going to be, the rest of the questions might be a little bit, might be a little bit more serious. But we love to ask this on the question. We did it with Peter Welch last week, and we'll ask you, what did you have for breakfast today, and what do you think it says about yourself?
Okay, so I'm a creature of habit.
Hi.
So just about every morning, I have yogurt and fruit with like a half teaspoon to a teaspoon of real maple syrup and some pecans and almonds. And it is my go-to breakfast. It speaks to the fact that I love whole foods. It's really important to me to start the day with food that's going to power me for those first few hours. I love the ritual of making the same thing every day. It's a touchstone for me. And I think that, every time I put the fruit in the bowl, I have to laugh because my kids and my spouse, they just call me such a fruit head. That is my comfort food. And they're like, you're so weird. Like everyone else's comfort food is chocolate, potato chips, but fruit is where it's at.
Okay, good. So you've heard it here, folks. That's how the Congresswoman starts her day. We do want to get into some more serious topics.
And a lot of coffee. A lot of coffee. I should have said that, but it was a given. Yeah.
So is coffee just in the morning throughout the day, or do you start to wind down, or is it straight through?
Only in the morning, or else I am just buzzing around. Not good for my team. Not good for anyone, really. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, let's hop right into some more serious topics. You recently introduced the Small Dollar Donor Protection Act, HR 8975, aiming to enhance transparency in campaign financing. I think that's something that is maybe less talked about in terms of the urgency of what we're facing at the nation. But I do think all of us do see, especially with the oligarchy and things like that,
Right.
that being of influence. Could you elaborate on the motivations behind this legislation for yourself and your team, and how you seek to protect grassroots donors?
Yeah, so it is something that's really important to me, and I know it's important to a lot of Vermonters because I hear from them about this. People want to get big money and dark money out of politics, period. They want to make sure that individuals, individual voters have the same amount of sway and access to their elected officials. They are deeply concerned about this moment that we're in with Elon Musk, the world's richest person, being able to essentially spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on the campaign of Donald Trump. And just to sort of pull back a little bit, just to let Vermonters know, you may have heard the expression Citizens United, and not everybody may know what that is. It was a Supreme Court ruling back in 2010, and it basically opened the floodgates for unlimited corporate cash to be spent in elections. And I think what people want is to get to a place where you've got individual donors making small donations to add up to a movement that supports a candidate. And so, as one of the reasons we wanted to support a bill that was around small dollar donations, and we had started to see that some candidates across the country were using the cachet of small dollar donors. Oh, I have small dollar donors, but they were gaming the system, and they weren't true small dollar donations, giving an indication of the amount of support that they had for their candidate. And so it is, to me, it goes to the heart of voter trust and election integrity. So my bill protects small dollar donors by requiring campaigns to disclose the number of donations under $200 that they receive, truly small dollar donations. And currently, those small dollar donations are not fully reported to election regulators. So we don't really have a sense of whether a candidate is, actually supported by small dollar donors, or if people are gaming the system. And I think it's very important. And as we continue to fight Citizens United, as we continue to say we got to get big corporate cash and unlimited donations in the way that we have with Elon Musk and other oligarchs, other billionaires, we also have to look at, other parts of the system that could be corrupted. People are concerned about corruption in our elections, and I want to do my part to fight against that. And again, it's personally important to me, but it's also important to Vermonters.
Yeah. So, Congresswoman, give us, so I just want to follow that thread a little bit. So, give us a hypothetical or an anecdotal about, so you find that there are big organizations, big corporations or oligarchs that are giving small dollar donations, but somehow they're masking it in this under, would you say $500 or $200 donation? So they're just kind of incrementally. So how does that work? What does that actually look like when you explore that? And I think the one concern people might have is, if I give a $200 donation and I'm just a regular citizen, am I going to be named? Could I end up on a blacklist, whether I be supporting the Republican Party or the Democrat or the Green Party?
Right. No, names will not be disclosed. So it's just a way of validating that, in fact, these are discrete individual donations and not donations that are made via proxy, essentially, right? Okay. And so small dollar donations, and you may not understand the extent to which this is true, but small dollar donations are an indication of somebody's grassroots support, right? Yep. And so when you get grassroots support, it signals to other people within politics, oh, this is a serious candidate. They have the support of the people. And our concern is that you would have, whether it's a corporation or organization, essentially making these tiny small dollar donations to make it look like you've got this grassroots support when actually they don't. So it is a way for the Federal Elections Commission to keep track of this, but no, it won't be individual donors' names, because I know that's also very important to people. They want their privacy. I get that. I totally get that, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, where is the bill at right now?
So
what's the timeline for it as you?
yes. So here's what I want people to understand about this moment that we're in. And I know that we were going to touch on this a little bit later. Republicans are not interested in partnering with Democrats on anything right now. It is a sorry state of affairs. We can't get our ag bill, our farm bill over the finish line. We can't agree on what the budget should be looking like. And so right now it is we introduced it last Congress. We weren't able to move it. We're going to be reintroducing it, and I'm going to continue to try to find co-sponsors across the aisle, because that's how you move stuff in Congress. You find people who are like-minded. And I know that there are Republicans who are also concerned about dark money in politics, who are concerned about the fact that their constituents aren't trusting in their election. So it shouldn't be a heavy lift, but it's been very difficult for us to find partners. And it's one of the reasons why I continue to participate in bipartisan caucuses for different topics, because I want to continue to make those connections so that we can do something on this issue, because people want that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think it just echoes the Vermont DNA, where maybe we're just really weird up here in Vermont, but I do think we try to go across the party lines. I do think we try and work together. You know that from the
Yes.
in the past in the House. And so I think it's always a little bit mystifying for us how the rest of the country is so at odds, even when, we all have to work together with our small communities.
Absolutely. And, we had we thought we had a co-sponsor on a mental health bill. I know it's happening. The mental health crisis is happening in every district. We had a co-sponsor initially on the Republican side who was willing to work with us, but as it worked its way through the process, he took his name off the bill. He didn't want to be seen as working with Democrats. And that will be the end of us as a democracy.
Let's go there. We have a couple other questions, but let's go there. We're going there now. As I mentioned before we hopped on the call, I had seen you talk passionately at the Vermont Economic Conference in January, hosted by the Vermont Chamber. And I think you could hear a pin drop after, it was very quick for you. It was 5 minutes. You kind of came in, you told everybody what was up in Washington. And again, I think you could hear a pin drop. And I think it was a sobering thing, but it was real and it was practical and pragmatic. And I think it just kind of woke us up a little bit. But let's talk about the fact that, truly, before the midterms, A, do you see anything getting done? And B, what is the tenor, temperature, and how do you navigate that, Congresswoman?
Yeah. So let me give you a very good example of when I say not a lot is getting done. I just came from the floor of the House not too long ago. The bill that we voted on today, and I'm not joking, was a bill to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. There are bills in the queue to add Trump's likeness to Mount Rushmore. There are bills in the queue. It's just nonsense. It's nonsense that is taking up all of our time. We have real issues here. And we have a housing crisis in Vermont. And because of that, we have a workforce crisis. Our workforce crisis is connected to our immigration, problems that we can't seem to come to any agreement on reasonable, sensible, sweeping immigration reform. But instead of doing that, and there are willing partners, we know the issues that are important to Americans right now. Instead of that, they are dragging us back to Washington to vote on renaming the Gulf of Mexico, which is, I might add, overwhelmingly unpopular among Democrats and Republicans. They do not want us spending our time on this. So another example, I was in the judiciary the other day. We were supposed to be debating the budget resolution and the reconciliation process as it related to grants that move through the Judiciary Committee that fund ICE or Homeland Security. We talked about issues related to the border. I'm not joking, and you can go back and watch the clips. We were there between 8 and 9 hours with our Republican colleagues. They did not say a word. They were not, and I'm not exaggerating, like we would try to engage with them on conversation. They sat stone silent for 8 hours. They had been directed by their leadership not to say anything. How can we function if we're not talking to each other? So I know some of these people outside of that committee. I've gotten to know them. As I said, I'm in bipartisan caucuses. I play on the bipartisan women's softball team. And something has happened within their conference that they have been willing to cede all of their power and control to this administration. We in Congress have a role. We're supposed to be a check on the presidency. We have the power of the purse. We are the ones that move legislation that funds things. And if we can't even get them to talk to us in an 8-hour hearing, it's impossible to get any bipartisan work done because they're not interested in working with us. And it's stark and it's bleak and it's dysfunctional. And it is one of the reasons why we have to break this fever, this commitment to that they have to one man. Nobody, regardless of party, should be 100% of the time doing the bidding of the president. That's not the role of Congress. And so you asked me, how do I navigate it? I am a glass half full kind of gal. I love people. I'm always trying to figure out what makes people tick. Where can we get some movement? I'm not going to give up on this, but something has to break on the Republican side for them to realize that by them giving up their power as members of Congress, they are destroying our constitutional democracy. And it is difficult for me as a member who has worked across the aisle my whole career in the legislature. I was known as a straight shooter. The person who nominated me to be president of the Senate was actually a much more conservative member of the Senate. I was elected unanimously by my peers. I try to always listen to all voices. In the structure right now in Congress, with Trump essentially telling the Republicans not to work with us, it's very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we appreciate the work that you're doing. Couple different directions we could go with that.
Yes.
I mean, I think there's a question to Representative Balint around, and we try to a clean, good line here with this telecast, knowing it's going out to the community and people
Absolutely.
on both sides of it. But
Yeah.
at a certain point is right, as opposed to well, you have your perspective and I have my perspective here, as opposed to saying things like, at a certain point, truth and rightness
They exist.
They exist.
They exist.
Let's go to immigration, and the two I really wanted to talk to you about today is immigration and kind of the focus around women's rights, and in particular around FDA approval of abortion medication.
Yeah.
What are you doing, or what are you seeing come to light, or how at all can we really protect the citizens, or at least the people here legally? And we've seen a couple episodes in Vermont from immigration and ICE. And obviously we want to, I think the future vision of that is we want to attract people to come here to be part of our workforce, to be part of our small business development, to be new families in Vermont. I think you have a really good record in Vermont. We look at Afghan Alliance and we look at ECDC. So how are we protecting that through your eyes? And then I think the kind of the follow-up question will be women's rights, especially around the abortion and things like that. So why don't we tackle immigration first? Where are we at with that?
Okay, great. So I think it's very important that we start with a very clear statement that I can make to all the people who are watching and listening. I don't care who you voted for in the last election. Trump is the president, and he swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Part of the Constitution, I think that we take for granted is freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, due process. And what I think people forget is the Constitution is clear. It's not just those rights for American citizens. It's for everyone who lives here. Everybody is entitled to those things. And so when the president said over the weekend, when asked, is it your responsibility to uphold and defend the Constitution? And he said, I don't know. That calls into question whether any of our rights related to due process are safe. Now, there are people who come here legally through various programs, right? And they are given permission to be here, and they live in our communities and across the state. And we have several very high-profile incidents in this country of people who are here legally. Now, Trump's administration is trying to deport them because of free speech rights. And again, that is at odds with the Constitution. We also have had ICE arresting some of our farm workers. And my understanding, and I was just getting a briefing from my team, that some of them may have been deported already or will be deported. And we can have a conversation around people coming to this country illegally and how we create pathways for them to come here legally, to work here, to give dreamers a chance, people who were brought here by their parents. We can have that conversation. But what this administration is doing right now is having a chilling effect on the workforce, right? And we can talk about just like the moral imperative of treating people poorly, and how that, for me, has huge ramifications for us as a nation that believes in freedom and due process. But if we're just even looking at dollars and cents, because a lot of times with my Republican colleagues in Congress, they're always looking through an economic lens.
Sure.
So let's do that. Let's look through an economic lens. We don't have enough workers. They want to come here and work. Let's give them a pathway to do that. I hear that in every single sector in Vermont. Every industry need more workers. And it is so discouraging to me that there was a bipartisan bill last Congress that was working its way through the Senate, and Trump was very clear that he did not want that bipartisan bill to go through. And so are we trying to solve problems here, or are we not? Or we're just using them as, these issues as political pawns? But I can tell you, farmers in Vermont, companies in Vermont, they need more workers. They want people to be able to come here legally. And so there is the literally not having enough bodies, right, to keep your business afloat or expand your business. But there's also the other piece that's happening right now, which is when these raids happen, and remember, this administration was going to go after the worst of the worst, the most dangerous, which I think we all can get behind, right?
Yep.
We don't want dangerous people living among us, but that's not what's happening. And so people aren't showing up to work, and fruit isn't being picked, and nuts aren't being picked, and cows aren't going to be milked. And so it does have this ripple effect. And the other piece that I want to connect the dots for people: undocumented immigrants pay hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even billions, I have to check my numbers, in taxes. They do. People don't understand that. So the other situation that's going to happen right now, if these people who are here stop working, they're not going to pay as much into the system. And then that money that they never get back in Social Security or in Medicare, they don't get it back. It benefits the rest of us, right? So there's so many different angles that we could come at, but I don't think that this is an administration that really wants to solve the problem. Because put something on the table, put a bill on the table that we could all get behind. They're not doing that. They're just using this as a shock and awe campaign, and it's going to hurt our economy, and it's going to absolutely devastate families and community members that we know and love across the country and in Vermont.
Yeah. The word that comes to my mind, and I've said it since November, is endure. It's kind of like, can the American dream, can the American Constitution,
Yes.
can Vermonters, can we endure until enough of the wheels fall off, something happens. I know we've got you for about one more minute.
Oh, geez.
Being our glass half full gal,
Yes.
as you have named yourself, help us reflect on your experiences. What advice would you offer to Vermonters aspiring to engage in public service and civic leadership through these times? And, we can look at our select board and our town meetings. We can look at running for your region in terms of being a senator or representative, or going all the way there. But I think even, we've got our quasi-governmentals, we've got our chambers of commerce, we've got our servant leaders all throughout Vermont. But I bet, and I speak personally, we're getting a little exhausted here, coming off of a pandemic.
Yes.
In 2020, where we served a lot of that. So just give us our glass half full speech. Give us our Rob.
Okay. I'm so happy to do that. Look, democracy is an experiment. Democracy is an idea, and it only holds together if all of us take part in lifting it up and holding it together. And so I am serving in Congress. Many people across the state serve on select boards, school boards. They serve on their development review boards. They are integral parts of nonprofits that support their communities. What I want Vermonters to do right now is to find a way to get involved. And we all have different levels of energy, a different amount of time. But I know that part of what is driving this partisan divide right now is a crisis of loneliness and disconnection. And the way that we combat that in real time is by seeking out opportunities for us to get involved. When we see that giving our time makes a difference, whether it is working at your local food shelf, whether it's volunteering. Actually, I see people in Brattleboro who go around and fix up the flowers by the covered bridge. Like, they take it on themselves to do that. It feels good to do that. Just, intrinsically, it feels good to do that. But it signals to other people that you have a stake in the community, and maybe they should have a stake in the community too. And so if you're interested in running for office, absolutely. But it doesn't just take people serving in elected office. It takes all of us to be engaged. And I love people. That's why I do the work that I do. I don't care what your political persuasion is. I care about what's important to you. And I love the communities across Vermont and the strength of our communities. It's the people.
Great. Congresswoman Balint, thank you for sharing with us. We know you're busy. We know you got to get back to work as a true Vermonter. We want to thank you so much for your time here today.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. Let's do it again, okay?
We will. We're going to be checking in all throughout the year with our whole representatives and senators, as well as our state's people as well. So we want to continue the conversation. As we've discussed today, the issues facing our state, from campaign finance transparency to workforce development to immigration, are deeply interconnected with our national policies. In these uncertain times, the need for informed leadership and constructive dialogue, as we've learned today, is more critical than ever. To our viewers and members, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Chamber Telecast. We encourage you to stay engaged, stay informed, and continue to participate in the conversations shaping our community's future. Special thank you to our producers at Catamount Access Television, and thank you, Mike Cutler, on the other end of this. Until next time, I'm Matt Harrington, and this is the Chamber Telecast.